There, everyone is Al-Khali Shepherd. I believe at this point, one way or the other, you might have heard of ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT is actually a conversational AI model developed by the OpenAI, and this is probably about to be the next big thing, if at all it isn't currently. Basically, I can say ChatGPT is a model that has answers to questions to an extent. Today, we are going to see how ChatGPT can help make us more productive or efficacious while using Microsoft Excel. Now, to access ChatGPT, you can just type out the link you can see displaying on my screen currently into your browser, or better still, I'll be attaching this link to my description below. You can just access ChatGPT by clicking the link in my description. Good. So let us move to our Microsoft Excel workbook and see the problems we have to solve. Now, this is the data set I have. If you're quite observant, you can see that there is data in every other column apart from two. That is the serial number column at the extreme left and the end of year bonus at the extreme right. There are a myriad of ways we can actually do this by ourselves. But let us see how ChatGPT can help profile a solution to this problem by itself. All right, then. So to add a serial number, all we just have to do is come to ChatGPT and tell it the problem we have at hand. Then I come to this, you can come to this box looking like a search box. Then I enter. Now see what ChatGPT does. Now you can see it just keeps on popping out answers like that, telling me to add serial numbering in column A for a large data set in Microsoft Excel and use the row formula. You can see it's actually preferring a solution to the problem I just told it. Now it is saying first select the cells in column A where you want the serial numbers to appear. Next, type equal row without the quotes. Now you can see it's actually telling me I need to type this particular function into the cell I want the serial numbering to begin from. So I just Control C, then I come to the cell, which is cell A2, then I come to formula bar, then I just paste the function that has been given to me just now by ChatGPT, and I enter. You can see a number has been produced. Now, when I double tap, you can see this has spread across. Now, ChatGPT has successfully given us a function that produced the serial numbering. But what did you observe? You can see my serial number actually starts from number 2. Now, the thing with ChatGPT is ChatGPT actually produces responses based on how descriptive enough your instruction was to it. So if you actually want a more precise answer from ChatGPT, you tend to give ChatGPT more detailed information as to what your problem is. So a vague description of your problem actually makes ChatGPT gives you a more generic response to that particular problem. But if you give ChatGPT a more detailed problem, it tends to give you a more precise answer. So I come back to ChatGPT and I probably want to rephrase the instruction I gave to it or rephrase the information I fed to it and see if I can actually get a more precise information. Now, all I have to do is rephrase the information I fed into ChatGPT. All I'm trying to do is to be more precise to see if I can have a more precise answer from ChatGPT. One thing you should note is you might not actually get anything more precise than the initial answer you've gotten. But let's see if we can actually have a more precise information that gives us a more correct and precise answer. Don't forget that we can actually make certain changes to the initial function ChatGPT gave to us. Now you can see the only adjustment I made is starting from cell A2. I'm just trying to be more precise with the information I'm feeding into ChatGPT. Then I enter. Now observe something. Okay, so you can see now it says select the cell A2, the first cell where you want serial numbering to start. Type the following formula into the formula bar, row open bracket, close bracket -1. Now you can see it is giving us a more precise info at a go. And I Control C, then I can just delete this initial function I added, then come to the formula bar, then Control V. When I enter, you can see 1 has been produced. Now, earlier on, all we could have done was to add a -1 by ourselves. But all I wanted to do was to show us how ChatGPT can even be more precise with the answers it produces to us, depending on how descriptive our information referred to it is. So let's just drag this downwards and you can see looking all good. Now, there are a myriad of ways to do this. Like I've said, we can actually use the sequence function also to achieve this goal. The sequence combined with the count A function, all these are ways we can add a serial number to this column. So this time around, all I just have to specify to ChatGPT is the particular function I want it to use. Let us just see what ChatGPT does as we specify the particular function we wanted to use. I enter. Now, what have you observed? You can see ChatGPT has actually considered the fact that we told it to use the sequence function and has produced an answer. Now, I just have to copy this, Control C. Now, I can decide to just clear out everything I have here. Now, come to your formula bar, Control V this, then enter. Now, this is how ChatGPT can work. So I'll keep saying it. The more detailed, more explicit you are with the problem you have at hand, I think the more precise ChatGPT comes up with answers for you. You give it a very vague description, it gives you a very generic answer. Now I come to the second sheet and I face the second problem. We have to fill column I with the appropriate information. Now you can see next to column I is column J, and you can see there is information spread across J2 through to J6. Now, this is what we call the job rating. Now, for you to obtain an end of year bonus, you must have a particular job rating. Now, you can see for a job rating of 1, it's expected that individual collects a bonus of no bonus. That is, nothing should be given to that individual. For a job rating of 2, it's expected you have a bonus of 3.5% at the end of the year. You can see these are the job ratings of all the individuals in the column G. Let us see how ChatGPT can come and help us do this. Now, you can decide to start a new chat. This is what I've been doing all this while, or you can decide to continue with the chats you've been having with ChatGPT, or you can decide to edit the previous information you fed to it. Now you can see adjacent to this information is an icon. Once I just click on this, ChatGPT gives me the opportunity to edit the text I had before now. But this is not what I plan to do, so I just clear out this information I added, then I cancel. So I just come here, then I describe the problem I have at hand. Now, this is just my own way of describing the problem I have at hand, and I am trying to be as explicit as possible. What specific formula, what specific combination are we making use of this time around? Okay, so you can see ChatGPT is giving us. Now this says to use the VLOOKUP function in this case, you can enter the following formula in cell I2. This is where we are to enter this formula. So Control C this and come to Excel and paste this in cell I2 and see if we are going to have what we desire. So I Control V. Okay, so you can see we have an answer, but we actually have to add in dollar signs to fixate this table, because when we tend to drag downwards, you tend to see that the relative referencing is what this formula has. So let us actually give it an absolute referencing. So I just add dollar signs to, sorry, just make sure I add dollar signs to J2, K6, and I enter. Good. So I just drag this downwards and we see the response. Now, this is perfect. You can see the only thing ChatGPT didn't give to us was the dollar signs, was the absolute referencing we actually wanted. But that doesn't mean ChatGPT can't do that. If I was more specific about it using absolute referencing, it probably would have given me an answer with absolute referencing, right? So that's just all I'm saying. So you can just highlight this, then come home, then select percentages. Good. I can see this is now looking properly. He has actually given me a function that helps produces answers. So you can help check and match to see if the answers are actually correct. But this is actually good enough. Let me just highlight. So let's say I want ChatGPT to use the if function to produce this answer. Like I've said before now, there is a myriad of ways we can achieve this. VLOOKUP is just one way. I think XLOOKUP can also work. Let's see how we can use if function. I'll tend to tell ChatGPT to use the if function and see if ChatGPT can actually come up with an answer for me. This is just all I have to do. All I just did was rephrase. Now what I added is with the if function. Now this says stop generating. Now this says to use the if function in this case, you can enter the following formula in cell I2, this formula. Now I can just copy this, Control C. This is how dynamic And this is how ChatGPT can think. Actually, a good tool. Then I come to my first cell, come to the formula bar, Control A, I Control V. This is actually good, but ChatGPT is actually missing out in the absolute referencing. I'll have to make some certain absolute referencing before this formula can work properly. So all I just have to do is come here, then I make this now drag this downwards and see if we have an answer. And this is good. I've successfully added the if function. If you observe my formula bar, all if function is being used for each of the cells. Now, this is how ChatGPT works. So you can see it actually gives us an idea, it brings forward the idea. It's now up to you that is actually conversant with Excel to now make those little changes. So what if we actually want ChatGPT to produce this function and this function comes along with the absolute referencing we are seeing now? So let's just come back to ChatGPT. Now all I just have to do is I'll come back here, then I make a little bit of an edit on the text I've added. Now, like I said, using Microsoft Excel, how do I determine the end of the year bonus in column I based on the job ratings in column G with the if function? Using absolute, using proper absolute referencing. Now let's see. Now I'm trying to be more explicit with my description of my problem to ChatGPT and see if ChatGPT can actually come up with a more precise answer to the problem without me having to think of any adjustment to the already provided formula. So let's just leave it like this, then save and submit. Whoa, and you see what I have? So I just say stop generating. Now you can see this time around, I was more specific with the problem I have at hand. And ChatGPT tends to actually give me a more specific answer to the problem I have at hand, right? So I can just copy this. This time around, I wouldn't have to make any adjustments. Just Control C this. Then I come back to my Microsoft Excel. Then I select the first cell. Then I just Control A. Then I Control V. Then enter. Now you can see no much change was made. So this is just how ChatGPT works. I'm not saying ChatGPT has all the answers to every question in the world, but all I'm saying is when you tend to be more explicit, when you tend to be more detailed with the problem you have at hand, ChatGPT tends to give you a more specific response to that particular problem. If at all ChatGPT is aware of your problem, right? So it's actually a very useful tool. And when you know how to properly describe your problems to ChatGPT, I expect ChatGPT to come up with a quite a reasonable answer for you. Come to the third sheet, and this is another data. So it is just the same data, but this time around, we want to have the total annual salary by regions, right? So when you look at this data properly, you can see there's a column which says region, right? So we want to see the total annual salary for every unique region that can be found in this particular column. So I'll come again. We want to be able to see the total annual salary that has been generated for every region, for every unique region in this particular data set. So I just type out my problem. Okay, so you can see what I've told ChatGPT to do. Let me just make some adjustment. Let's see how ChatGPT responds to us. Okay, so you can see you can use the sum if function to get the total sum of salary in column G, blah, blah, blah. Now you can see this is now the function we are to use, which is this one. To use the sum if function in this case, you can enter the following formula in cell K4. So I quickly just copy this and I take this to cell K4. Stop generating is what I told us. So just good. So Control C this, then we take this to cell K4 and see if we are having what we want. So this is cell K4. So I bring out my formula bar. I come into the formula bar and I Control V, then I enter. Good. So let me drag downwards and see if I have a good answer. Perfect. And you can see how this works. So ChatGPT is actually perfectly giving me a function that helps to produce the annual salary for every unique region found in the columns region. And this is just how ChatGPT works. To round up this very video, I would say ChatGPT is actually a very applaudable tool, so you shouldn't be left behind.